When peace like a river attendeth my way, when sorrows like sea billows roll, whatever my
Unless the Lord builds a house, they build. Unless the Lord builds a house, they who build it labor in vain. Unless the Lord guards a city, the watchman stays awake in vain. It is futile for you to rise up early, to stay up late, to eat the bread of painful labor. This is how he gives to his beloved sleep. Behold, children are a gift of the Lord. The fruit of the womb is a reward. Like arrows in the hand of a warrior, so are the children of one's youth. Blessed is the man whose quiver is full of them. They will not be ashamed when they speak with their enemies in the gate. Psalms 127.
First John chapter 4. By this the love of God was revealed in us, that God sent his only Son into the world so that we may live through him. In this love, not that we loved God, but that he loved us and sent his Son to be the propitiation for our sins. Beloved, if God so loved us, we also ought to love one another. No one has ever seen God. If we love one another, God remains in us, and his love is perfected in us. By this we know that we remain in him and he in us, because he has given us of his Spirit. We have seen and testify that the Father has sent the Son to be the Savior of the world. Whoever confesses that Jesus is the Son of God, God remains in him, and he in God. We have come to know and have believed the love which God has for us. God is love, and the one who remains in love remains in God, and God remains in him. By this, love is perfected with us, so that we may have confidence in the day of judgment, because as he is, we also are in this world. There is no fear in love, but perfect love drives out fear, because fear involves punishment, and the one who fears is not perfected in love. We love because he first loved us.
One of my father's favorite stories that we shared, one of our favorite stories, was one year we were driving here, and he had his Infiniti, and I had my white car, and I got my love of cars from my father. And we're driving up. We're driving way faster than we should have been. And we're going around a corner, and there's a cop car stopped on the side. So we slowed down as best we could. And we looked over at each other, and he had that look on his face that... And the cop never came after us. And every time I would see him, he'd always be like, I can't believe we didn't get pulled over. We were well over 100. So my drive here this morning was about an hour and 45 minutes, and left a little later than I wanted to. And about 45 minutes into the drive, I'm just getting on Route 80, all week, I refused to listen to any type of music at all because I didn't want it to remind me of the pain I've been feeling all week. But today was a little different, and I wanted to listen to some songs that, he liked and that I only know because of him. And no sooner than when I turned the radio on, in the left lane comes flying up the hearse. And now we're about an hour away from here, and I'm like, it can't be. And I'm driving, I'm getting closer, and it was him. I smiled the whole way here. One of the many things I learned from him, he was always mindful of other people and who was in the room. And one day we were at home, and I was real young, maybe 8, 9, and I went and I got the mail, and I go through the mail, and there's nothing in it for me. I don't know what letter I was expecting as a 9-year-old, but I was upset about it. And I made a little comment, oh man, I never get any mail. A couple days later, I go out and I get the mail, and there's a letter for me. And I open it up, and if you ever got a letter from my dad, he had that professional custom letterhead with his initials on it, which was it's fancy, it's custom. And inside, it had a $10 bill, and a note said, Chris, I love you. And I saw how upset you were the other day that you never got any letters, so here's a letter, love, Dad. And I remember opening presents at a birthday party, and opening all my gifts, having a good time, and one of my friends goes, which one do you like the best? And I open my mouth to answer. He goes, oh. He goes, he likes them all the best. And again, it was just him being considerate of other people's feelings and things like that. And it wasn't always the case, because if he had to put you in your place, he would. If you knew how slow he walked, I want you to know he walked that slow in his 70s, his 60s, 50s, 40s, as when I met him. But so one day, he's walking down the steps to the basement. I'm like, hurry up, Dad, you walk so slow. And I said, I bet I could beat you in a race. And he goes, oh yeah? So it was after dinner, you and me in the backyard. I was like, okay. It was 1, 2, 3. And he wasn't concerned about my feelings then, because whoosh, I didn't know you could move that fast. And I haven't seen him move that fast ever since. As I got older, he was having a conversation with me about how him and his father reached a point in their relationship where it wasn't, the father-son take out the garbage. It was more the father-son friendship as adults. And, he said, if I didn't know you and you went to my high school, we would have been best friends. And he always would say, I could have seen us hanging out and getting into trouble and all the fun stuff. But I didn't just lose a father, I lost a friend. And it was an honor to be your son. And it was an honor to be your friend.
Thank you all for being here. I used to accompany my dad when he'd do funerals and playing guitar. And he had this bit that he'd always say, where he'd say, why do people say you look so good? And I just kind of sit there and cringe while he would say these uncomfortable things. What he did, he told me numerous occasions that when he speaks in a certain way, as you know, and my brothers and I all do an impersonation of it, incidentally. He would say, when I'm in the coffin, I want you to make it so that you can press a button. I could sit up real fast and scare people. He had all these morbid things that he would say. It's fun. I know he had a great sense of humor, as you all know. He also had really strong opinions. I don't know if you ever knew that. Like some of you with your own parents, and maybe also with my dad, my relationship with him was not without its complications. He was a passionate guy. He felt very strongly about things. One of my favorite stories that I love to tell, it's a good story, don't worry, it's not going to go there in the speech, but one of my favorite stories to tell is when I was a little kid, I said, I was a musician, and I am a musician, and I said, Dad, everything that people do with music is on a Mac. We got to get an Apple Mac. We need a Mac. It's got to be a Mac. And this is the truth. He said so proudly and firmly, as if a vow, we're a Windows family. It's just, it may have been code for politics. I'm not sure, but when someone dies, for most people, all sorts of things come up. Mostly irrational hypotheticals. We never got to go fishing again. I'm vegan. That's not me, but that's some of you. But I have my own playlist of things. And it's a strange time that when you feel like being quiet and introspective, you're in this social situation. And but it's good. It's good that we're doing this. It's good to tell stories about things that actually did happen and not dwell on these hypothetical things that didn't happen. So I'm glad that we're all here, and I hope that you're glad that you're here too. Loss is something we all experience. We can all empathize. Even if you didn't know my dad, you can be empathetic, and that helps to make this special. All my friends are musicians. My one friend is an old New York City hippie. He said, sorry, my brother, he talks like that. Whatever you're picturing is what he looks like with the beard and everything. He said to me, only remember the strawberries, which I think is a metaphor, but I don't know. And a lot of people have said a lot of things to me the past few days, and very comforting and gracious things, and the one that really has stuck with me is only remember the strawberries, and I think it's actually a really good thing to do, to only remember the strawberries, the sweet times, and I know my dad would want that. I think we would all want people to do that for us, so here are some of the strawberries. My dad loved spending money on things that made him happy. Don't read into that too much. If you were with him and he wanted to, we're going to rent a movie or something like that and it was only available to buy, he would just buy it. And that's such a small thing, but not everybody does that. And he loved having a good time. He loved being with the church people, and you guys were like his entourage. That was such a special thing. He loved having a party. My dad loved movies. My dad loved telling you about movies he saw. He loved ruining movies for so many of you. And for the most part, my dad did what he wanted to do for his whole life. That's pretty remarkable. For better or worse, he lived the life that he wanted to live, and he did the things that he wanted to do, and he didn't really do the things that he didn't want to do. My dad used humor to make difficult situations more comfortable, which is something my brothers and I do intuitively. Many of you do the same thing. That's really special, and he cared about people. I saw some people from Pastor Cooper's church, my friend Fred. One time he was preaching down there, I was with him, and he cared so much about people. He said in his sermon, I love hurting people. And again, I just thought, I just laughed, how funny that is. Think of him from time to time. Think about the good times you had and the good encounters that you had with him. And I will do the same. Thank you.
Be here a while. I was never very good at public speaking, so forgive the papers. As my brother said, we use humor and movie quotes to cope. So to quote the football movie The Replacements, I'd like to tell you something classy and inspirational, but that just wouldn't be our style. And while I'm using humor, and you'll hear me refer to him as Vinny or Vinny B, which is what we call him, it doesn't mean that I'm being irreverent. I'm just saying the words I think he'd want to hear. And I want to start by telling you about Vinny Manzo the son. My grandfather passed away in February of 1995, and I want to start by reading something he wrote for Father's Day 3 years ago for his father. And my grandfather would say to him, "I love being with you, you only remember the good times." And he would say afterward, "No, I only focus on the good times. I remember all the times." Dad, it's Father's Day, and I'm writing this because it helps me bring clarity to my mind and give expression to my inner thoughts, and in some way I'd like to honor my father and say thank you. You were and always will be my example, not a role model, but a living, fleshed-out example of a father and of a man. Even in your brokenness, you were always there. Your voice was rough and you were rugged, but in your own awkward way, you were always there. Big Jim. You'd move heaven and hell to protect us. Trips to court bailing me out and hiring your big-shot Goomba lawyers, his words, not mine. Middle of the night visits to the emergency room, paying off people for my foolishness and always paying my expenses. I knew you were there, and it gave me strength and confidence to plow through each day. If you only knew how me, Margie, Nancy, and our sons would talk about you and the awkward things you'd do. We'd laugh and say, "Oh, Jim, if only he was here now." In Pittsburgh, 6 months after your death, I was still grieving my loss when God spoke to me and said, "He can do more for you now as an intercessor than he could have ever done for you on earth." I miss you, Dad. I miss you a lot, though I never say that to anyone. I think about you all the time. I try to match my life in age with yours, asking what he was like at this age. I have bittersweet memories of us, mostly sweet, but you were no saints. And for the bitter ones, there was healing. And I remember in the later years how we would stay up through the night at my house laughing, crying, hugging, and apologizing until we worked things out. You would constantly tell me, "Don't make the same mistakes that I made." You were a good man, Dad, and a good father. You were my father. I love you and miss you. There just wasn't enough time. June 2019. I want to tell you about Vinny B, my father. One of my father's favorite stories when I was 10 years old playing baseball. I need water for this. Excuse me. One of my father's favorite stories was when I was 10 years old playing baseball. It was the first game of the season, and he's told you this story, and I swear to God it's a true story. First time up at bat, first game of the season, it's bases loaded, and I'm up. And I hit an inside the park home run. And everyone's cheering, I'm running around the bases, they meet me at home plate. And everyone's high-fiving me, and everyone's doing, picking me up on their shoulders, and I get to my father. And he looks at me and he says, "Quit." He said, "Quit while you're ahead." And I look at him, and he said, "Right now you're on top, and you could go out a legend. Just quit while you're ahead." And for the rest of the season, I got hit by the pitch. I struck out. I got to hit it here or there, but. And he loved telling stories, and stories about his life, movie quotes, stories about us, more movie quotes, Criminal Minds, movie quotes. There were a lot of good stories. And he would point out to this parking lot behind me, and he would say, I taught you how to ride a bike here. And when we were talking about where we were going to have this, and we weren't sure where we was going to house enough people, we were talking about potentially outside the church, but this was home. And when he would tell those stories, he would say, to quote the movie Apocalypto, he would say, I am Jaguar Paw. My fathers hunted these forests. This is my forest, and I hunt these with my sons, and they will hunt this with their sons after I'm gone. And he used to drive me to school, and we'd talk sometimes, and sometimes we didn't need to talk. And we listened to a lot of U2. And those songs meant a lot to both of us. And we'd get choked up on some of the lyrics of song 1. And there was one song he knew was ours. And I promise I'm going to have a good ending with all this. But the lyric was, you don't have to put up a fight. You don't have to always be right. Let me take some of the punches for you tonight. Listen to me now. I need to let you know. You don't have to go it alone. And I'd go with him whenever he'd drive to Tennessee or to Connecticut, as much as I could, and we'd talk about values and plans, politics. I'm sure many of you know how we like this politics. And we'd bond and we'd watch movies, and he was my father. And I learned everything I know about walking in faith from my father, and he would often tell me about what it was like for him, what he described as walking on the water with his decisions. And I tried to emulate that type of fearlessness in my own life as best as I can. And I would call him when I was going back and forth to Massachusetts, and I would tell him about some of the things I was facing. And he would tell me about what it was like for him in Bible school, and we talked about the things you face and how to stay hidden in Christ because we're dead. And knowing what you were up against. And I knew when I was out there, he was praying for me back here. Okay. And it wasn't up until about 2 years ago, that my father would kiss me on the cheek when he would see me. And I thought, he's getting older. He's just channeling his inner Goomba, as he calls him. And I didn't really understand why. And I didn't really get it. And then I realized not too long ago, he was feeling like himself. And he was tapping into joy. He was tapping into joy. And you're saying, who's Joy? Joy's the woman down at the snack shop. She's going to serve you your pretzels. But he was starting to feel like himself again. And his struggle with discouragement was gone. His struggle with accusation was gone. And his struggle with loneliness is gone. He wasn't just going on, he was moving forward. I need water. I'm about 10% of the way through. What time is dinner being served? I want to tell you about Vinny the leader. I want to tell you about the man who walked on the water. And I want to tell you about the man with the vision. And I want to tell you about the pastor of a generation and the coach of a generation and the father of a generation. And there were those who got busy trading on his name and going behind his back. And I want to tell you about the man who got kicked in the teeth and he built a church. I want to tell you about the man who they tried to destroy and he built a school. And they beat him to his knees and he built a daycare. And to quote the good Reverend Balboa, it doesn't matter how hard you hit. It matters how hard you can get hit and you keep moving forward. Vinny Manzo. He crawled through a river of stuff and came out clean on the other end. And I'm sad, and I love my father, and I still love my father. But he wasn't alone, and he was restored, and then some. He was restored. And he went out on top. He went home in his chair, in his office, in the house of the Lord that he helped build. And he wasn't alone, and he wasn't afraid, and he wasn't hungry. I've had about 12 phone calls of people telling me how happy he was and how he was the happiest he's ever been. He quit while he was ahead. He went out as a legend, and we could stand here on these grounds and say, this is Vinny Manzo. This is his church, and his sons will serve the Lord with their sons after he is gone. He fought the good fight. He fought the good fight. And he can do more for you now as an intercessor. And he can do more for you now as a corner man. He can do more for you now as a coach, and he's going to look at your enemies, and his lips are going to get real small like they did, and his eyes are going to get real big, and he's going to say, I know how we can beat them. Here's how we're going to take them out. And he's going to go before you, and he's going to see the plans that they have to destroy you, and he's going to say, here's how we can take them out. He's going to go see Nancy Pelosi and say, I'm your Huckleberry. In the book of Deuteronomy, it says, when you go to war against your enemies and see horses and chariots and an army greater than yours, do not be afraid, because the Lord your God will be with you. Do not be afraid, because the Lord your God will be with you. Your intercessors will be with you. Vinny Manzo will be with you. Your coach will be with you. Jane will be with you. Whether we like it or not, Big Jim will be with you. Fighters fight, and Vinny Manzo was a fighter. And now it is ours to continue, and we're moving forward. We will fight the good fight. We will miss his sword. David is my brother, and I will follow him through hell, whether he wants me to or not. He's our pastor, and he will lead us well. It's how Pop wanted it. David told me he was going to shave his beard so they couldn't tell us apart, just so I could fill in when he wanted a break. I said, I think they'd know when it was my turn. He's probably going to take this back after this. My father was a good man, a good friend, and a good father. He was my father. I love and I miss him. There just wasn't enough time.
Is it still morning? Can I say good morning? Is that okay? Oof. My stepfather was a really great man. He was a kind man. He was a funny man. He was a faithful man. And you all knew him, so there's not much that I can say about him that you already don't know, but I can tell you what he was to me. Over the almost 20-something years that I've known him, he's been many different things in my life. He's been a pastor. He's been my principal, a friend, spiritual father, and then eventually a father, which is cool. To say that he has had a profound effect on my life and my family's life would be a severe understatement. And his hard work, his God-given vision, and his dedication to his people is rooted deep in the fibers of who I am today. And I think many of us can only say the same thing. A lot of that is a result of my time at KCA, City of Hope International Church, and the many, many moments I got to share with him. Some of those moments were shared with all of you guys, Tusk, picnics, events, and some of those moments were the more quiet, private moments between him and I. Talking about movies, talking about TV, more movies and more TV. And once I started making movies, forget about it. It was all he wanted to talk about, which I was gladly do that. And in all those moments, it didn't matter who was there or when or where or what. His love for all of us was so strong and steadfast and faithful. And then little did I know all those years ago that him and my mom would get married and that they would become the happiest I've ever seen them. Little did I know that I would get 4 new brothers. V used to teach me guitar way back when I was a kid. Dan gave me my first drum lesson. Dave would take me out of detention to go to Costco and make some trips, more than once. And Chris was he was the bass player, man. He's the coolest. You couldn't. And little did I know I would get new cousins, nieces and nephews, and new aunts. But in all fairness, they were always Aunt Margie and Aunt Nance. And just now it's official, right? So, and little did I know that I would get to be his son. Some of those moments that we shared together were funny. Some of them were beautiful. Some of them were serious. Some of them were awkward. Some of them were very strange. I have this very vivid memory of one day, him and my mom had just gotten engaged. And I've always called him Pastor. I don't know what else to call him. And we sat down. We had food together. And he said, "You can call me whatever you want." I said, "Okay, Pastor. Thank you." I said, "Okay. Yes." And I think I tried to call him Vinny B once, and it didn't feel right then. But we got there, and it was awkward, but there was a lot of beautiful awkward moments and really funny, sweet moments that I'll never forget, really. And one of them I'll never forget is when him and my mom first started seeing each other, coming home and just seeing him sitting on my couch watching TV. I said, "Hey," and he said, "Hey." I said, "I'm gonna go upstairs." And I thought, this is new. This is very new, but it was cool. It was cool. We got used to it. And each and every one of those beautiful, funny memories, we learned to see each other in a new way. It was different, but it was the same at the same time, And we were the same people, but in new positions. And I thought that was I'm really grateful that he greeted me with open arms every time. And I can only hope we had more time to make more of those funny, awkward memories, but there's never enough time, obviously. I wish I had more time with him. I wish you all had more time with him. I wish my mom and him had more time together. But a thing isn't beautiful because it lasts. A thing is beautiful because it existed. And I thank God every day that he existed in his very unique way. And I cherish all those moments. And we continue to grieve moment to moment and day to day. And we'll continue to grieve and grieve again and again. And the grief will stay with us. And grief is a non-linear process. And that's something I've been thinking about a lot lately. But the road to healing is long and winding. And we might often feel like we'll never quite get there. But I want to encourage everyone to not be afraid of it. Keep the grief with you. Grief is a beautiful thing. Grief is love persevering. Grief is the unexpressed love. Him and my mother have this quote on their wall at their house, and it says, "You fill a house with love and it becomes a home." And I think that's a really beautiful testament to his legacy and all the work that he did for us. Some people get statues, other people build homes. And he built this home with so much love. And if you seek his monument, look around you, because it's us. And my stepfather was a great, great man, and I'll miss him very, very much. And I was trying to think of poems or quotes or Bible verses to say, and they're all taken. So I always come back to this one quote. It's by one of my favorite authors and from my favorite book, Winnie the Pooh. And Winnie the Pooh tells Christopher Robin, he says, "There may come a day where we can't be together, but keep me in your heart and I'll stay there forever." Thank you.
A lot of you guys already know me, but I'm not a Manzo, or I wasn't a Manzo. Became a Manzo this February. He was always a father to me. He was always there for my family. In our darkest times, he was always there, and I am who I am today because of him. His vision for us as a church congregation, his preachings, I grew up in it all. His vision for Kearney Christian Academy, I was there for it all. I knew him as a pastor, as principal as well, just like my brother was saying. So much of what I want to say, my brother already said. We're in the same position. As a friend, someone who's always there for me, my family, as a storyteller and a story repeater. A joke teller and joke repeater. An advice giver, and just as Fabio again as a father. When when everything first started with them, my mother, she was getting all dressed up, and I was, it was a weird, she was not always getting ready on a Saturday night for anything, and I asked her, "Oh, where are you going?" "Just going out with somebody." "Okay. Where are you doing?" "Oh, just going out, Okay. Didn't think anything of it. Just thought it was a little weird. And I was, very curious because then she just left, and I was like, this is not usual. So we have a Ring camera in our driveway, and I was curious. I was curious. I'm wondering what's going on. And I see his Cadillac pull up, and he got out of the front seat, walked to the other side, and opened the door for her. And she got in, and I was just, what's going on? And that's when I realized, oh, okay, this is happening, this is happening. And I was, as much as I was surprised, I was not surprised because he was always there for us, and it made me really happy that everything came together, and this, as everyone's been saying, it's the happiest he's been, and I'm really forever grateful for how happy he made my mother as well. I have, he's always just been there for us, and I was thinking of everything. I just had a really funny memory. I must have been 9, 10 years old, and my mother would, do some errands, and sometimes she'd have something to, for him, but she was working downstairs. If you guys don't know, my mom works in the kitchen. He's 2 floors up in his office, and she would send me there to take something, food or anything, and I would go up there, and it was, he'd hug me and greet me and everything, and I'd give it to him, and then he'd slip me a 5. And, I'm 9 or 10 years old. I'm like, okay, sure. And then I would come back down, and I'm like, Mom, he gave me $5. She's like, no. Next time he does it, don't accept it. I was a little disappointed. But, and then the next time, I would go up, and he'd do the same. I said, Pastor, I can't. My mom said no. He put it in my hand anyway, just don't tell her. So I come back, I'm like, Mom, do you need me to bring him anything? Like, yeah, so, she would tell me, like, no, tell him. I'll go, but, Pastor, like, no. But I wouldn't put up a fight, But he just, he really made me who I am today and his vision for everything. And, see it through his sons, who are my brothers. They're always my brothers. Always. And we'll never forget anything he did for us. How he was always there for all of us, and the happiness he gave to us, the joy, and the teachings he would pass on, and everything. Now I'm going into a little, like, my mind's going into a blank, but just wanted to really just come up here and just share my appreciation for him and everything. No.
So I have to follow all of that. Bear with me, I'm nervous. I wanted to keep it simple and try not to be as emotional as possible, because it's a lot. So I'm only going to say two things. The first thing is that on Tuesday morning, I was in the church office, and I'm checking the emails, going through church emails, and I'm going over Tuscarora registration. Now, we don't do Tuscarora registration through email. There's an actual link, and there's a whole website, and we go through all of, the information gets filled out and then submitted in a form. Not my peepa. Not how he rolls. He doesn't know. Yeah, he didn't do that. It's not how he rolled. So I look into the email, and it's just the word register. Just the word register. I was like, okay, this is what we got to work with. No money, no form attached. I don't know how long he was staying. I assumed the whole time. And then about 2 minutes later, another email comes in, and it says, me and Marcia. That's it. Same type of email. So I was like, okay. So Issa and I were laughing. We're like, I guess we got to register him, This is what he wants. Hold on. The fact that we're able to have this here at Tuscarora really means more than words can express. It really, really does. So much of who we are as a church and as a family has been birthed from being here at our time at Tuscarora over the years. And the fact that he registered to be here, I think, is even better, It's a big step, because this is the closest we've ever gotten to him ever registering for anything on time, ever filling out any type of form, even if it was the word register. It's the closest we've gotten. And the second thing I want to say, and I'm still keeping it light and airy, because I'm not crying on stage, was the only place he loved more than Tuscarora was Costco. Yep. Costco. So you see the sign over here. He always said, if I'm going out, you best believe it's going to be at Costco. So Amanda and I had this poster that we made for him, and on Tuesday, after everything was over, I was like, I gotta go to Costco. So the two of us drove to our local Costco, and we spoke to the manager, and it was a very interesting conversation, It was one of those things that you never thought you had to say, and it was funny, because, I'm sad, but I was laughing because I was asking for a Costco card, And so we got him this honorary Costco employee card. So if you saw him with it on Sunday or Monday, it's going in with him, because even in heaven, you need a Costco card to get in. Pipa, I love you. And vovó, vamos pintar bem.
Well, first off, thank you for being here. I did write something, and when I went to look for a folder to put it in, because I do have a lot of things at home, I found this purple folder, and I said, oh, wow, that's perfect. It's Gianna's favorite color. So I got the folder, and I opened it up, and there was a poem that I wrote years ago. And the first time anyone read it was, we had a talent show at Tuscarora, and my brother-in-law Skip read this poem. He came marching up, and he registered as anonymous. How do you say that word? Yeah, okay. And he read this poem that I had written one time. So when I opened it, I wasn't going to read it now because I really don't want to take everybody's time, but it's too bad it's my turn. I mean, he bashed me for years. You know, everybody knows that. They all know they're only the one-sided stories that were his. Okay? So, this is what I wrote. 6 real baby ducks were my treat when I was left in Hackensack with 100 relatives to greet. I was so alone, no father or mother. I had no clue I was going to get a brother. 5 days later, I sat on a bench. I was told to sit and not get up or flinch. I had no idea of what was to be, but after all, I was only 3. The big doors opened, and guess who walked through? It was Daddy and Mommy, and she was holding you. My own baby brother to have and to hold. I learned very young there were diapers to fold. We grew as there was no Pampers. We grew as friends with secrets to share, but I always knew wherever I was that you'd always be near. But it wasn't to be just you and me, because many years later, we would be 3. A tiny little pest who was always in our way, a skinny little imp who chose with horses to play. We each took a turn to pick her up at the barn, because once she entered your car, it would smell like a farm. And so we grew, you and me, and little Nancy, to make it 3. We played, we fought, we talked till dawn's light, and then the phone rang late one night. Just who could it be? The dreaded voice said, Vinny hit a tree. Would you live or would you die? It was our first hint that God was nigh. We all went to church, a new one at that, and we knew it was strange right off the bat. The prayer that was said was not like any other, but how could it be? For this was for my brother. Broken was your finger, and broken was your jaw, and broken was my car. Forevermore. You were going to mend, but not easily, and neither would your family. God was put to the test, his points to earn. Boy, we sure did learn. God saw us through each time we should have died, but only you followed the call to be by his side. All grown up, we went our own way. How different we all were from when we used to play. You were the preacher, but still a rebel at heart. Nance, a disco queen, who certainly dressed the part. As for me, the roar of a Harley made my heart flutter. Wearing my colors, ladies of the trotter, was a thrill, even though I was a mother. As always, God has a plan, and he sure wasn't finished with this Manzo clan. We were raised by a mother who loves to pray, and a father who spoke only once, or else would pay. At holidays and family gatherings, we were to see each other, but so different were the girls from their brother. One excuse after another, I would lurch, but the truth was that I didn't want to go to church. Our little family grew in some ways more separate, not even realizing we were so desperate. But love was never lost or out of reach, for isn't it love of which you preach? Jeannie said, Come to church, it's where you belong. Try it, maybe we won't be so forlorn. So we went, Danny, Nancy, and I, looking for answers to which to apply. We heard of God's love and much, much more, and by the end of the night, we were all on the floor. That was in May of 1993. Who could ever guess of the many miracles to be? Just a circle of love from which we were born, through the good times we'd play as kids on the lawn. Just a circle of love which Christ was the center, each of us bringing our families to enter. So I thank you for being there since I was 3. You, me, and Nancy, a great family tree. And thank you. Of course, my brother-in-law Skip read it much better, so I'm sorry, just bear with me. Here's the other part. Well, here we are. In 1946, I was born. I was the star of the show. Then came 1949, an Italian son was born. Wow. I lost status very, very quickly. We grew, and 10 years later, little skinny brat joined us. We were close in everything, and family was always the top. So we married, we had kids, we got divorced, you know, the normal American life. But we stayed close. You started your own family, traditions, and our kids were born. 2 to me, 4 to Vin, and 1 to Nance, oh geez. They grew, and then there was more kids. Which brings me to the main part of my sermon. But I won't keep you too long. That's a promise. That's what he would always say. My husband took a hike very early. So to my boys, Uncle Vin was everything. But then there was Uncle Skip, who, in case you didn't know, was black. Yep, a black man was the center of this very, very Italian family, and a very major man of importance to all of us. His death rocked our world. His son Casey was staying with Vin, and Vinny always said the hardest thing he ever had to do was telling Casey that his dad had passed, and we grew. My 2 boys were older than the rest of the boys, so they didn't share in a lot of things with the younger kids. But there was David. Oh yes, there was David. We drove my parents to Florida. I drove the car and Vin drove the van. Only Daniel didn't come. He didn't come. He was too young. And David liked a girl. And how could this be? Because he was such a kid. But in every state on Highway 95, there was Sharon. And on the way back on Highway 95, there was still Sharon. She was still with us. And David, the best thing that you ever did was marry Sharon Cornelison. And let me just say to all of you that David makes very wise decisions. So we're in Florida, and we went to see a manatee show. And then there was a reptile show. The man asks, any questions? BJ raises his hand. And he says, do snakes pass gas? The answer is yes. Oh, gosh. And then he married Raquel, and the 2 of them just looked like the top of a wedding cake. And so then there's son number 3, Christopher, who sat in a high chair and was eating. And when he didn't talk, he didn't want to talk, he just pointed. And Patty would give him, this was the milk, he pointed, and this was the food, and pointed, and that's what he ate, whatever he pointed to. Oh, Chris, who went through 1,000 cars, now heads up his own shop. Chris, who said, "Dad, we're the Lion King. You're Mufasa, and I'm Simba." And it was on my brother's mantle. There's Mufasa and Simba. Oh, boy. Okay, so now there's number 4, Dan. I don't have too much to say about Dan because Dan never did anything wrong. I mean, nothing. Dan never got spanked. You can ask the other 3 kids, never got spanked. And Dan was always by his dad's side, and we grew. We all had boys. Each of our boys, their firstborn was girls. Vinny, Jamie, Danny, Lindsay, David, Gianna, and Dan, a girl coming in November. Vinny told me that Robin said, "No worries, Dad, I'm gonna get you a grandchild." And so they are. So we all went from zippers to bows. My brother's grandkids were, wow. He wanted to put Gianna in a cage. And Gianna couldn't even look at anything or anybody, and nobody could look at Gianna. Michael, oh gosh, wait, I forgot. One Easter Sunday, Gianna fell asleep on him, and he said, "Hurry up, get the camera, take pictures of her sleeping on me. I want to see this." Michael, who felt there was never a need to talk, did not talk at all. Until David and Sharon went to Africa. And then in the daycare, Michael said, all of a sudden, "I'm stuck." What? I'm stuck. Well, before getting him unstuck, we all called Africa to say, "Michael said stuck." Now, David. The amazing Sharon had to get 3 kids, 3, 2, and 1, ready and dressed to go to school so she could teach in KCA. She gave them their eggs and brought them to daycare, whereupon David's first mouthful of oatmeal, he puked all over me, in my pockets, down my shirt, everything. Every day, till they realized, let's take him to the doctor, he has an egg allergy. But finally, Marcia, she had, where am I? Wait a minute. Marcia had a cure for little Dee. It's called coffee. Nothing like Bustelo in a sippy cup. I'm sorry, I'm trying to make this short. There was a problem one year with the church and the city of Kearney. Vinny was in Africa, or Mark Sharonas, we don't know which one. And David went to the court. The whole church went to court, and there stood David before the mayor and all the council members. And I remember thinking, wow, Michael Corleone, the son of the Godfather, that was my nephew. And by the way, he won. Vinny fought for everything, church, buildings, lives, and he hurt deeply by others. But he never let on. He held it and he went on. And then, bam, I don't know, he was always chewing movies. I don't know if anybody remembers the movie The Miracle Worker with Helen Keller. I'm gonna try to make sure I use the right fingers. But this is like A and B and C and all this. Well, all of a sudden, and if you remember in the movie, she's going, like all this stuff. Well, this was Vinny with Marcia. She was right there for 15 lousy years, and all of a sudden, bam, there was Marcia. Oh, gosh. After all these years, so long, were we dreaming? We used to go out, and I would say to Marcia, sit in the front, sit in the front. She'd go, no, 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 no. You sit in the front, you sit in the front. Well, guess who moved to the back? So Marcia brought 3 kids of her own in. Marcella, who had her own little family, and Matt and Lucas. Now, Lucas, being the youngest, was fine with the relationship. Sure, Mom, whatever you want, whatever makes you happy. But not so with Matt. Nope. Matt said, oh, no, no. What if this doesn't work? We're going to have to leave the church. Matt, my angel, no worries. 2 wonderful years, 4.5 months of seeing my brother, the happiest he's ever been. And now, just like that, he's gone. Oh, real quick. They took me out to dinner on Sunday. He ordered jambalaya. The waitress said, do you want linguine or brown rice? He pointed to me and he said, go ask my mother. He loved music and always included songs in part of his sermons. So I have 2 words now. The first one is, I'll be seeing you in all the old familiar places. And the other one is, why do the stars go on shining? Why do the seas rush to the shore? Don't they know it's the end of the world? It ended when you lost. I don't even know what it is. He was Vincent, he was Vinny, he was Dad. He was pastor, he was reverend, he was coach. He was boss, he was chief. But he was my brother. That's what he was. He was our brother, and we'll miss him.
Excuse me as I walk across the stage in these high heels. Okay.
In order to try and get through this, we had some Kirkland signature water. Let's see if it's miracle water.
Miracle. Yes, darling. What will it be like? Let's start again. Ready? What will it be like when my pain is gone and all the worries of this world will fade away? What will it be like when you call my name? And at that moment when I see you face to face, waiting my whole life to hear you say, well done, good and faithful one. Welcome to the place where you belong. Well done, my beloved child. You have run your race
like when tears are washed away and every broken thing will finally be made whole? What will it be like when I come into your glory, standing in the presence of love so beautiful? I'm waiting my whole life for that day. I will live my life to hear you say, well done, my good and faithful one. Welcome to the place where you belong. Well done, my beloved child. You have run your race and now you're home. Welcome to the place where you belong.
What will it be like when I hear that sound? All of heaven's angels crying out,
Singing holy, holy, holy are you, Lord. Singing holy, holy, holy are you, Lord. Singing holy, holy, holy are you, Lord.
I'm waiting my whole life for that day. But until then I'll live to hear you say, well done,
my good and faithful one. Welcome to the place where you belong. Well done, my beloved child. You have run your race and now you're home.
welcome to the place where you belong. Well done.
Did they leave me any? And of course they didn't leave me any water. You say, how do you get through this? How do you speak after that? You do it the way my father would. You lock onto something, you pivot, and you spin it. And if you knew my father, he was a carnivore. And nothing was well done with him. What you do is this: you take your quarter-pound Kirkland signature hamburger, you put it right on the grill. You don't flip it and flip it and flip it. You put it on the grill one time, and you wait for the sign. The sign is that the blood comes up on the one side, and that is when you flip it. and you wait. And the minute you see a little pooling on that other side, you take it off. Anything longer is not a hamburger. It's a hockey puck. We said on Tuesday we were going to mourn, we were going to cry, we were going to laugh, we were going to quote movie lines, we were going to worship, and we were going to celebrate. And that's what we've done. That's what we continue to do. Today I'm going to briefly share my father's biography. I could speak to no end about who he was to me, but I won't do that too much today. Fortunately, I have most of you as a captive audience every Sunday for the next 40 years. So today I will stay on point. My father, Pastor Vincent B. Manzo, was born on September 24th, 1949. He was born in St. Vincent's Hospital, and he swears that prior to his birth, it was just called hospital. He was the only son to an Italian mother. I need not say anything more on that. And we've heard so much already about my grandfather. He was a tough man. We only knew him on this side of his salvation. But Jim was a tough guy before. My father's upbringing was rough. He loved his two sisters, Margie and Nancy. Even I knew, to the very end, even for me, Margie and Nancy were off limits. And it was the only subject I would have to think through before I talked to him. And he would say to me, Margie and Nancy are grandfathered in. Now, most of you don't know what that means when Vinny B says it. We think grandfathered in terms normal people use it. Grandfathered in means this: David, one day you're going to go to heaven, and you are going to see your grandfather, and you will give an account for how you treated his daughters. So think wisely before you say or do anything with Margie and Nancy. He was the family protector. Even before the Lord, my father valued loyalty. He valued family values and integrity. His life was an open book. There are so few stories we could share that he hasn't already shared. There was no pretension. There was no hiding. He was the most vulnerable person, and he shared it willingly and openly, week in and week out, with his closest friends and with total strangers, because he knew the grace of God that changed his life. The average time a pastor serves a congregation in the United States is somewhere between 2 and 5 years, depending on the statistics you look at. My father faithfully served the same congregation for 49 years until the day the Lord called him home. My father had interesting heroes and interesting people who motivated him. The man who invented the chipwich was one of my father's favorite heroes. Whenever we would go on a road trip, we would stop at a gas station to refill, and we would get a chipwich. And he loved the chipwich for this reason: because a guy from Teaneck, New Jersey, during the World's Fair, who sold ice cream, ran out of ice cream cones. And while everyone else would have focused on the missed revenue, lost opportunity, and lost money on ice cream, this guy came up with this idea. And on the spot, he bought every chocolate chip cookie he could find. And you've all heard this story 1,000 times, but you got it one more time. That man put his ice cream between those two chocolate chip cookies. He rolled it in some Jimmies. Not sprinkles, not chocolate chips. They were Jimmies. And that man is a millionaire today. That story is who my father was. He looked for opportunities that nobody else saw. He pulled things out of the air from prophetic words, from insights that God gave him. Where we all saw discouragement, where we all saw no end, he always saw opportunity. Always during times of adversity, when the naysayers would come around, when Sanballat and Tobiah would be speaking, he never backed down. He never wavered from where he knew God wanted him to be. He would settle in his heart the will of God and never looked back. And we'd talk about it invariably, and without fail, in every conversation, whenever things were difficult, Vinny B would pause, smile, and say to me, "Bet on them if you like." Meaning, I know God has this under control. We don't run away from giants. He served as senior pastor of City of Hope International Church, helped found Kearney Christian Academy, Loving Hands Daycare Center, instrumental in transforming the lives of thousands of young people. I don't need to tell you the stories. You lived it. We are joined today by people watching from all over the world. Calls have come in from all over the world. I said on Sunday, I've always known the extent of his reach, but even I did not comprehend the depth of his impact. My father fought the good fight, but even more so, my father loved a good fight. He loved helping people, and he was the most loyal man I ever knew. If you were in covenant with him, it didn't matter how far you fell, how bad you messed up, how many people abandoned you, who lied about you, who betrayed you. When everyone else quit on you, and when you quit on yourself, Vinny Manzo was the one to tell you, remember who you are. My father, lived with a deep awareness of the grace of God, often saying, see everything, overlook a lot, correct only a little. He would always tell me, one day we're going to stand before the throne, and you're going to have to give an account for how you treated people. And every one of us is going to have erred on one way or the other. Nobody gets it exactly right. So he determined, when he stood before the throne, he was going to err on the side of being too generous, too magnanimous, too forgiving, too gracious. That is what he wanted to hear the Lord say to him. And that is what the Lord said to him when he entered into eternal life. This was how he lived. One of the shortest books in the world is People Who Grabbed the Check at Dinner if Vinny B was at the table. He would always smile, and he did it, and he'd always say the same phrase, keep your record clean. I have heard my father preach thousands of messages, and there is one that always sticks out more than others. It has remained such a significant part because it exemplifies who he was. He loved to swim upstream. Particular message in the early 90s, or late 90s, early 2000s, it was a men's conference. He was the first speaker. If you've never been to a men's retreat, here's how they work. There's a manual that says the goal is to make just about every guy in the room feel guilty, feel self-condemned. You get a big altar call. Everybody cries. There's a great emotional experience. Some will receive breakthrough, but most will go home still struggling and even further enmeshed in guilt because they couldn't willpower themselves to make the change. But my father stood up and he preached about Mephibosheth. Mephibosheth was the grandson of Saul and the son of Jonathan.